Hey, what's going on, guys? So, we are about a year and some change into the new Ultimate Universe, and I've talked a lot about Hickman and Shishido's Ultimate Spider-Man. I love that book more than a white supremacist loves non-white women. That shit is a certified fucking banger. But a few months back, I did a sort of broad overview of the Ultimate Universe as a whole, and at the time, I didn't talk much about the Ultimates, because I think there were only like 2 or 3 issues out, and you can't really judge anything based off that. But here we are, 7 issues in, or at the very least as I'm recording this, 7 issues in, and I feel pretty confident in saying that this is the best superhero comic on the shelves right now. Which I think is saying a lot, because superhero comics have been in a really good place these past few years, despite what ComicsTube anti-SJW rage baiters would have you believe. And this is especially hard-hitting for me personally because I went into this series with every preconception imaginable. Not necessarily in a way where I was hating on it, or wanted to go into the book hating on it, but I love Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's run on the original Ultimates, but there is just no way that you can do that comic series now. For a myriad of different reasons, but mainly updating the whole world outside your window idea with contemporary politics, that gave me pause. Not because I don't want politics in my comics. Although that said, a lot of political commentary that's done right now does feel like listening to 12-year-old boys giving lectures on the female orgasm. But really, Marvel's just in a different place now as opposed to 1999. Because of the MCU, these characters are a lot more recognizable, and as a result, a lot more sanitized and user-friendly. So playing up that Stan Lee philosophy of Marvel characters being morally flawed people with more power than anyone deserves just would not fly today. And in fact, seeing reactions to Miller and Hitch's Ultimates over 20 years later is evidence of just that. Thankfully, this is not what Denise Camp and Juan Figueroa are going for here. In fact, I wouldn't even traditionally call this an Avengers comic. Typically, the Avengers is a superhero soap opera. Like, the Scarlet Witch is pregnant and she doesn't know if the baby daddy is Wonder Man or the Vision, but she's secretly in love with Hawkeye, who's married to Mockingbird, who's been cheating on Hawkeye the entire time.
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care!
Yeah, this is not that. This is distinctly not a traditional Avengers comic. This isn't even a traditional Marvel comic. This is superheroes versus the establishment. It's a return to form in that it interprets the institution of American superheroes as it was initially conceived, going back to Superman. The Ultimates here are champions of the oppressed. Evil Reed Richards from the original Ultimate Universe has traveled to a world very similar to the classic 616 Marvel Universe, and he's altered the timeline so that superheroes don't exist, and he runs everything from the shadows. It's more or less Marvel's Flashpoint with a little bit of Dark Reign sprinkled on top, and that's kind of the whole thing with this new Ultimate Universe. And this book is directly spinning out of and dealing with the consequences of Ultimate Invasion. That was the miniseries that laid the groundwork for the new Ultimate Universe, and you have teenage Tony Stark and Reed Richards' Doctor Doom trying to rebuild the superhero community so that they can lead an assault on the Maker, who I think got trapped in a time loop. I haven't read Ultimate Invasion in a while, but he's set to return at a very specific point in the timeline, and every issue ends with a countdown to the Maker's return. So Tony and Reed are on the clock, and time is aggressively not on their side. And so far, the series has been a getting the band together kind of a book, and it's reveling in the alternate history lore, and it's been a lot of fun seeing the Ultimates build their Avengers team with classic characters who are starting their superhero career under completely different circumstances. So, in a weird way, they feel like completely different people compared to their 616 counterparts, even though they are the same person. Or getting completely new and original characters who are alternate universe approximations of classic Marvel heroes, like trans Native American Hawkeye and Polynesian She-Hulk. And the new characters, I think, are really cool additions here because Denise Camp and Juan Frigeri used them to better illustrate and flesh out the alternate history of this new world and how the Maker's changes have affected the wider Marvel universe. But it's also fun to see how classic Marvel characters like Captain America and the original Jim Hammond Human Torch get to engage with this bastardization of the 21st century. Not that Jim Hammond's had much to do in the book yet. He was introduced in the Free Comic Book Day special, and he's been in like 2 issues, I think. But, it's just nice to see him in something, I guess. Both Chip Zdarsky and Christopher Cantwell tried bringing him back, and nobody's done anything with him. Which is a shame, because I feel like you can do so much with the concept of a sentient machine from before the tech boom of the 20th century being brought into the digital age. Like, there's so much story potential there, and I hope that Denise Camp and Juan Frigeri are able to do something cool with him. That said, their take on Captain America is haunting. Because now, on top of being a man at a time, with the Maker's cabal breaking up the United States into corporate territories, Steve Rogers is now a soldier without a country.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
And speaking of Captain America, I think it was issue 2 which most heavily focused on him. I think that was the issue that really hooked me on the series. Granted, like I said before, you can't judge a comic book run off of the first couple of issues, but on its own, issue 2 is probably the greatest single-issue superhero comic I've ever read. Because the Ultimates storm the White House with the goal of saving America. And they run into Midas, who I don't think has been in anything since Grant Morrison and J.G. Jones's Marvel Boy, which came out like 25 years ago. And for anyone who doesn't know, Midas is this trillionaire douchebag who collects rare objects and people from across the galaxy and like hoards them in his little collection. He's a really cool villain, and I honestly wish more people did stuff with him. But here, the Midas Corporation bought the White House and most of the surrounding nation's capital, and in the basement of the White House, he has America Chavez hooked up to a machine, and he's been farming her for cosmic energy for years, using her to make ridiculously expensive cancer treatment drugs, and using her as a monetizable energy source. And he gives this whole speech about how America isn't a country. It's a business practice. It's commerce. And to try and save it is to transform it into something that it was never designed to be. It was a really fascinating speech, especially when juxtaposed with this corporate douchebag kicking the shit out of Captain America. But the issue ends with the Ultimates rescuing America Chavez, knowing that in doing so, they'd be crippling the eastern seaboard because she's basically powering most of the East Coast. And in saving America, they're costing the lives of pretty much everyone who lives there.
Yep, that's good shit.
There's also an issue that's solely dedicated to Reed Richards, and it's probably one of the most heartbreaking things you'll ever read. And it calls back to the end of the first issue of Ultimate Invasion. There's a moment between 616 Reed and the Maker where the Maker asked Reed if, given the chance, would he erase him from existence? And Reed says yes. So when the Maker goes to Earth 6160, he takes that shit to heart and completely ruins this Reed's life as like a fuck you to 616 Reed, who has nothing to do with this Reed. And he just tortures this guy for like 50 years. He kills all of his friends and psychologically breaks him to the point where he can only refer to himself as Doom. It is one of the most depressing things to read, but it's written beautifully, and I think Phil Noto was the guest artist on that issue, and I love Phil Noto. He's one of the best working artists today. But yeah, this comic has been absolutely fantastic. I have been seeing people try to pit this series against the original Ultimates run by Mark Miller and Brian Hitch, and I don't understand why. Because they're both critiques of Western imperialist oligarchy. They're just approaching the same commentary from opposite ends of the same frame, where the original Ultimates are presented as allegories for the American elite. Camp and Frigeri's Ultimates are in opposition to it. But saying that the original Ultimates is pro-fascism is like saying Starship Troopers is pro-military propaganda.
You are made of stupid.
I will say, if I had one major criticism with the book, it's the name of the team. Now, I know why they're called the Ultimates. You have this Ultimate Universe, so the premier superhero team is supposed to be the Ultimates. It's the whole branding thing, I get it. But the reason the Ultimates were named that in the original Ultimate Universe is because Miller and Hitch were making a point about how America sees itself. But here, these heroes are literally avenging what's been lost in the wake of Reed Richards having a cosmic-level nervous breakdown after his girlfriend broke up with him and started dating his best friend. They should be called the Avengers, more so than any other iteration of the team, quite frankly. But, I mean, that's really the only issue I have with it. Other than that, this book has been amazing in my opinion. But what about you? Have you read the new Ultimate series? What do you think about the Ultimate Universe as a whole? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share it, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you gotta do is subscribe and hit that bell for notifications for when I upload my next video. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, take care, guys.
Charged up.